The business idea that shook the world. The problem with starting a business is that it is risky. It is bad enough that it might fail regardless of how much time and effort the owner puts into it. It hurts to lose what one has worked so hard to make it succeed. But when it takes everything you have with it, just the thought of the risk is enough to deter many from taking the risk of starting a business. But if starting a business is so risky that not many people are willing to take the risk of starting a business, then the most successful business idea would be an idea that eliminated the risk. In fact, all it would take to eliminate risk is to eliminate the negative valuation of assets. But let's take a deeper look at risk. The initial problem with starting a business is that it requires capital. The concentration of capital is always risky. It could be stolen, it could cause bankruptcy if borrowed due to the high cost of borrowing, and even if taken out of savings, the loss of this capital could have devastating impacts of the future of a family. But this direct threat of loss is not necessarily the biggest part of the problem. The bigger part of the problem that because a portion of this capital belongs to someone else, usually a bank is involved but always the state is involved, these claims on your business intrude on your ability to run your business the way you otherwise would. With luck you can pay off the bank. You will never get rid of the state. Sometimes the state's claim on your business is so excessive it virtually owns the business, as is the case with socialism, communism and nationalization. The business owner is more akin to someone who has purchased a job. Despite the claims that come with capitalism, namely that a capitalist business is a privately owned enterprise, the state always retains a competing interest. In a real sense, the state has the major share, since it can veto most decisions made by private business owners. It must be made clear there is no risk-free business model if the liability represented by the state remains in force. This requires we look a bit more at the origin of liabilities, as they are not a natural phenomenon. Liabilities are not akin to a virus that spreads through the air, infecting businesses haphazardly. The Standard World Model, SWM, or the world as we know it, is natural. It assumes there is a substance that is physical and contains or is composed of matter, energy, space and time, known as the meshed universe. Matter, energy, space and time are concepts. Without words we would not know such things existed. But these things are not objective. They would not exist in exactly the same way we think they exist now, were we not around. This conceptual nature of reality is important to understand if we are to understand the origin of liabilities. It is especially important considering if we abandon the biblical model of reality for the SWM. If the world is physical, the only motive force is energy. It is not as if we know what this is. It is basically the idea that if something happens in a series, there has to be a force that caused it. This force is called energy. Energy has no moral compass. When it impacts life, especially human life, we refer to it as the law of the jungle. When we rely on the ability to manipulate force, we say might makes right and the end justifies the means. The most aggressive group gains political power. The state does not own the nation, but has ultimate power over the resources of the nation. The state exists as a claim on any resources it assigns to its subjects. It always retains veto power over any decision made by any of its subjects. But for the state to exercise its veto power and enforce its liability claims, it must have the means to exercise military might. But no one is going to volunteer to be the enforcer of state power for free. Which is a problem for the state, as governance is not something anyone is going to willingly pay for. This is where the law of the jungle kicks in, because if the state can expropriate wealth from its subjects, then it is necessarily a good thing for it to do and is justified. However, what this means is that however problematical liabilities are for the business owner, they are vital if the state is to survive. The state claims authority over all of the assets under its dominion. By controlling the property of the nation, the state controls the people of the nation. The more it controls the nation's assets, the more control it will have over its subjects. Indeed, being a subject of the state only makes sense if these people are dependent on the state to grant them access to the market. The state then grants preferential access to those who are its most active supporters. This includes those who are dependent on the state and its agencies to survive. The state are to avoid paying their fair share, because these people are the ones who require the state in order to avoid paying their fair share. The lowest priority for the state is the spiritually mature. These do not want or need the state. They get nothing from it they want or need, but much is taken from them, to benefit those who fail to gain spiritual maturity. And so, the state by claim the nation's assets, then using its overwhelming force to justify its expropriations from those who are spiritually mature. The reality is, the state cannot supply its own needs, and it must benefit a large portion of its base to maintain support. This leaves a large group who get no benefits they do not pay for and a large reoccurring demand for resources to subsidize the large percentage of parasites. But parasites need the state in a way Christians do not and never will. It is the loss of Christianity or its abandonment that has given power to the state. It is the restoration of Christianity to its proper position that will permit us to eliminate the state. There are 4 ways to spend money. It can be spent by the one who earned it, on themselves, or on others. It can be spent by someone who did not earn it, on themselves or on others. These 4 ways go from an efficient use of money to the most inefficient and absurd way to spend money. The last way, the most absurd way, is the state that takes people's money only to spend it on other people. And so, the purpose of the church is to prevent this kind of absurdity from happening. This leads to an astonishing conclusion. If the role of the church is to prevent parasitism, which is people spending other people's money on themselves or others, then the only viable and legitimate organization is a business. Every other organization takes money from others and gives this to others, and this is inherently wrong and apocalyptic, meaning contributing to the end of times. Logically, the church is and can only be a business. Only the church is able to eliminate parasites and parasitic activity. Only the church can eliminate the state and the need for the. To do this, the church transforms itself into a self-standing business that does not need the support or assistance of the state. The secret to an effective business model is the market, and the market is the bookkeeping used. An essential and key feature of bookkeeping is the unit of account. When given a physical form, or downloaded onto reality, the unit of account becomes money. If this unit of account is a unit of exchange, then it has an owner or someone who has a claim to it. This person or organization always exists as a liability. Bank debt is used as a unit of exchange or medium of exchange, but no matter if it is cash, or an account entry, there is always a liability portion. The money must be paid back to its originating lender. The same goes for fiat currency, though here the situation is a bit different. The state spends the money into circulation, so to some degree the liability is excised from the outset. Seigniorage is the difference between production and face value. This gives the profit margin on printing money. But as money circulates, its value is taxed away. Every time a dollar is spent, a portion is taxed back. Taxes pose an unavoidable risk associated with using money. When we accept fiat currency as payment, we incur a risk that it will not hold its value, that its value will be stolen from us. But we need to think what is being stolen. It is not assets. The government rarely comes in and takes our house, car or furniture. What it erodes with its taxes, is our equity. The state erodes our equity position when it taxes us. A market is simply a way for individuals to exchange goods and services while reducing or eliminating risk and threats of loss. Without the market, if the exchange was random, barter would need to be used and there would be no control over the exchange. The apologetic market eliminates risk. This is why one can start a business without risk, because starting a business is ultimately a market engagement. A business is a market unit. A consumer is a particular type of business identified in the free market because the consumer makes no profit. It ought to be apparent that starting a business in such an environment would come with many layers of risk. But the question remains, can a market be created that eliminates risk? The answer is yes. In fact, the market contains no risk unless it is infiltrated and infected by parasites. But parasites are not integral to the market. A business produces goods and services. What it needs it purchases. What others need, it sells in a specialized form. It does not ask for anything free, for everything it needs is acquired within the context of what it sells. If everyone is a business or has a business, there are no parasites. If there are no parasites, there is no state, nor is there a need for the state. When someone starts a business, the goal is to eliminate or reduce risk in some way. This is what specialization is about. Part of this goal is the elimination of parasites and parasitism. A business uses the market. The market contains no parasites. A market is person-to-person exchanges, one buys, the other sells. Yet, the free market is exposed to risk. It enters through the currency used to enable exchanges. It is the need for a secure medium of exchange that permits the state to insert itself into the market. This is entirely preventable if we adhere to the biblical model of the church. Christians are not permitted to own assets other than what is needed for private use. God created all assets, and He is the owner. The rich young man was told to sell all he had because he was not permitted to own property that rightfully belongs to God. What we own and have a right to, is the income earned as wages. In the church, a business is set up as an act of faith. People join together to help one another. That is all a business is. Find a few friends who need your help and whose help you could use. Then help each other. It's a small start, but see where it ends up. The key to business success is not where you start, it is the risks to which your business is exposed to. As a church, you create your own unit of account, based on the equity you create. The business grows by creating more equity. Equity is created by adding value to the things the business has. Expanded by adding assets and then adding equity to the assets. This is managed by an equity account the business creates. What you add to the business is credited to your name, whether this is assets or equity, as in labor. This equity is yours to spend on whatever goods and services the business offers. There is no risk and end threat of loss, to you or the business. The business, therefore, has no limits to how it is started nor no risk to its operation. Because it operates on equity, it creates no inflation, debt, waste or fraud. It is an entirely stable business without any downside. Building your personal business is tantamount to building the Church of God, in the way He ordained it.